All right, everyone. I have on David Steinman today, and he is a premier environmental activist. He shows how today's most popular items are contaminated with unacceptable levels of chemical toxins and pesticides, and he proposes alternatives and substitutes to help keep our families safe. He also has a new book, Raising Healthy Kids. So I'm really excited to chat with him today. You guys listening to this podcast all know that this is important to me, that we've really strived to make changes in our home as well. But it can feel really frustrating when you feel like everything out there is toxic. So I'm really excited to dive into this conversation. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here today, Elizabeth.
I would love for you to kind of tell us in your own words, how did you get into this work?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. Well, it came really naturally to me, but I think there was a really important moment. I grew up in Los Angeles, California, and fished in the Santa Monica Bay as a child all my life. And I didn't know that there was a DDT manufacturing plant that was dumping all of its DDT waste sludge where we fished. When I was starting out as an investigative reporter, nobody knew this about the bay and that all this DDT had been dumped. And I did a study with a doctor friend of mine and a marine biologist, and we found out that the people who ate the most fish from the bay had the highest levels of DDT and PCBs in their blood. I also had my blood measured because I wanted to know too. And my blood had a lot of DDT in it. And I was in my late 20s, early 30s at the time. So I knew if I kept doing what I was doing, I was just going to keep poisoning myself, because these folks, some of them worked on sport fishing boats. Some of them fished because they needed to for subsistence. Some of them did it for recreation. But one thing we had in common was the fish tasted delicious and we ate them.
Yeah.
I eventually published a report that led to the Santa Monica Bay becoming a Superfund site and helped to start a group called Heal the Bay because of all the controversy that our findings caused. We presented them before Congress, and I realized how important it is to know what's going into your body. And nobody knew this then. Well, I mean, we kind of knew it, but we didn't have the information. In the 1980s, there was no information about what was in our food. And it wasn't common knowledge. So I wrote a book, Diet for a Poisoned Planet, after that, which went into all the food groups and was kind of like making food naked, because it showed all the pesticides and herbicides. And you could see some foods, and some of them haven't improved, like apples had like 7 or 8 pesticides in every bite. And that's a lot of pesticide. So at the same time, you see that what's going on with our kids.
Yeah.
You can make those connections and say, well, everyone has to be an activist because we've all got kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know that, like, I don't know how accurate it is, but like on the EWG, their dirty dozen every year of like produce not to buy, apples
Yeah.
are always on there. And I've heard a
Oh
lot
yeah.
about apples being covered in pesticides. Does like buying organic and washing them make that big of a difference?
Oh yeah. And also, this is really a simple, I wrote Raising Healthy Kids, How to Protect Your Children from the hidden chemical toxins in our everyday lives, because I wanted to make things really simple for a busy mom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really simple to manage this problem. You don't have to throw up your hands and say, oh gosh, everything is poisoned. I really make it simple. So EWG has a lot of good information. Organic is really, really a much better choice. What the studies show, this isn't me speaking, this is the studies speaking, is that organic diets mean pregnancies with fewer complications, including preeclampsia, and healthier kids when they're born. They will have less incidence of cancer, diabetes, obesity, attention deficit disorder, anatomical changes because of exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals. The benefits are enormous to your children. So that's what the studies show. And organics are not perfect, but
Right.
they're really, really a lot lower in chemical exposures.
Yeah. I'm wondering too if some of that is like causation and correlation, because a lot of people who can like afford to eat organic and choose to do so also have less plastic in their home, also tend to use safer products, also tend to you see that like a similar mindset with people who are choosing organic. So it's like usually just not in the food, it's in their home, it's in their lifestyle. Um, so do you feel like kind of all of that could be contributing to it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'll give you an example. I'll share the story of a hairdresser in Orlando, Florida, who she and her clients couldn't get pregnant.
Yeah.
And we finally traced it to quad overload, quaternium compounds in their hair straightening products, in their hair. These were all curly haired persons. So they used a lot of special products for curly haired people. And there were so many quaternium compounds, the same compounds that are used to kill COVID-19, the coronavirus, are in all these ethnic hair curling products. They couldn't get pregnant until they all stopped using compounds that were overloading their systems with what are called quartz or quaternium compounds. That's about cosmetics and
Yeah.
personal care. So yeah, it's holistic, it's everything, but it's manageable. But it is a 360-degree view you need to take. You definitely need to take.
Hmm. Yeah, we actually have a couple of hairdressers in our family that have had major health issues due to working with chemicals their whole lives. Um, and one of them now still does hair, but she only does like she uses like hemp dye and only like natural stuff that doesn't have any chemicals or toxins in it. But she's had to like completely change her life because of a lot of the damage that was done and permanently affecting her thyroid and some other health issues as well. So it's just it's hard because there's like just a lack of knowledge around some of this. And then for me, I find it really interesting, like as a birth doula, when they say like it's okay to dye your hair when you're pregnant and it's okay to do these things. For me, that's not a choice I would make. I'm like,
It's
I'm like,
not okay. It's
the
not
smell
okay.
of it is so strong. I'm like, it has to be like stuff in
Yeah.
there that's probably not great.
So the way with hair dyes is this. It's not okay to use permanent hair dyes when you're pregnant. It's not okay to use them really if you care about your health when you're not pregnant, because they are strongly linked with cancers,
Yeah.
strongly linked in the studies, and including the offspring of persons who use the hair dyes during pregnancy. If you're going to use a hair dye, stay with a temporary that doesn't go systemically into the body, or as you were talking about, there's henna, and there are some, really good natural products that are temporary, but that's what you should be using during pregnancy.
Yeah.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with tons of the research that's out there, I find it really interesting with pregnancy that they say it's not ethical to test on pregnant women, but yet they recommend some things that have never been tested for pregnant women and say other things are okay that have never been tested. And then say that, then they're like, don't eat sushi, don't eat this other thing, don't eat that. And it's like, those things are probably safer than some of these other things that they're saying are okay to do in pregnancy.
Well, everything we were taught as kids is a lot of it is just wrong. It's all BS, and we have to relearn things because we're not being protected by our government so much. They're not looking out for me and my kids or you and your kids in the way that we really need them to be. It's only us.
Right.
And industry fills us with so many lies about what's safe and what's not safe. You know, there is no safe exposure to a chemical that causes cancer. And if you're pregnant and you have a embryo that's a few cells, uh, it's especially not safe because it's going to impact the gene expression and the fate of that child.
So let's maybe talk about like some of the other items that have toxins in them that we don't even think about, because it's like as soon as we have our kids, we're promoted to put soaps and lotions and so many things on them, which are actually products that babies don't even need. You don't even need to really bathe your baby with soap for a long time. I interviewed like a microbiologist who talked about the skin health and how this soap is actually like disrupting their natural skin health that like we're lathering on our kids. And so it's like we're just exposed to so many things as soon as we're born. So I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit.
So you're right. When I did an article for Natural Health magazine about the vernix, the outer covering
Yeah.
of the child's skin, and how it has all this bacteria. And the first thing hospitals want to do, and they wanted to do it with our kids too, is bathe them in a bubble bath, right? That's the first thing they do on birth when you go through conventional childbirth. They take the child and they give the child a bath, the baby a bath. Well, that bubble bath has chemicals like phthalates in it, which are the worst thing you can do for a child whose brain is developing, because we know from the studies that the more phthalate our children accumulate, the worse they do in school, the more attention deficit they have, their behavior changes, because these phthalates interfere with the endocrine system or the sex hormones. So when you're right, you don't need to overbathe your child at all. But when you do bathe, you need to look for products that are really safe. So here's one thing to look for right away that all your listeners can take home with them and use. Whenever you're buying your first bubble bath, and kids love cartoon character bubble baths, right? My kids wanted at the time Scooby-Doo and Hello Kitty,
Yeah.
you and Tigger. But these all contain laureth compounds, ETH compounds. If you see ETH on a bubble bath ingredient label like sodium laureth sulfate, or you see a PEG compound like PEG 150 or polyethylene glycol, that ETH in there, or sodium myreth sulfate, those products are very likely to have cancer-causing agents. So you want to avoid them. There are lots of really safe bubble baths that are either made with organic ingredients or will contain really mild soaps that are called glucosides. You want to avoid the ETHs, but look for the glucosides. It's all on the label, and it's really simple. I go through all this to make it really simple in Raising Healthy Kids, the book that Skyhorse is publishing and will be out in January and on Amazon and all the book sites. But I try to make it really simple. But a big thing is buying bubble bath, avoid those ETH compounds.
Mm-hmm. How is like, how are all these companies though getting away with putting all this crap in there? Like, that's what always blows my mind is like, you go to other places, like, let's just even say, I don't know what's in Europe's bubble bath, but we also know that their food system is different. It's not going to have the food dyes. It's not going to have some of the additives, the things that are allowed in the United States aren't allowed in other countries. Like, how are all these companies getting away with like putting all this crap in their ingredients?
So when it comes to cosmetics, because we were talking about that, there is no pre-market safety testing. And the FDA, since 1937, when the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act was, I think it was 37 that it was passed, has allowed the industry to self-regulate. So when I mentioned those quat compounds that were causing fertility issues in women who were using products for curly-haired persons, well, those quat compounds are banned in Europe, but they're allowed to be used in multiple times in products in the US.
Right.
We have to wake up as parents. The laws were written by the polluting companies in most instances. I know this because in California, where my nonprofit operates, I'm what's called a citizen enforcer, and we bust companies for having too many toxins in their products. So another example that seeps into our lives, take when you're going to buy some shellfish, say you want to make a marinara sauce and have a clam linguine or something. Well, except in California, those clams won't be listed for having a reproductive hazard, but the amount of lead in those clams, like from the major companies, will be so high that it's like drinking multiple glasses of drinking water from Flint, Michigan at the height of its crisis. So another big tip, don't buy canned shellfish products from China. Don't buy them. They're labeled in California because of the work my nonprofit did and is
Yeah.
doing still. But we aren't told this.
Right.
So this is our government with its head in the sand and not doing the job it needs to do.
Right. So then it is our job to protect our families. So what are some of the steps that we can take? We've talked about a few. Do you have like some other just like simple ones that parents can do to protect their families from toxins and chemical toxins in products?
Oh yeah, I'll give you a big one that this is one of the ones I would start with. Your drinking water, your tap water. Listen, there are so many different chemicals in tap water. There are chemicals called PFAS, polyfluoroalkyl substances, and these chemicals cause anatomical changes in kids who are exposed. They cause increased incidence of kidney and liver cancer in anyone who's exposed. They cause pregnancy complications. And most water systems don't test for the many different kinds of PFAS. So if you had $100 and that was your budget to protect yourself, here's what I would tell you to do. And this is tested with, listen, I'm an activist, so I live on a budget. And I went down to St. James, Louisiana, St. James Parish, where some folks make like $17,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
We had to find solutions for these people, because they don't make a lot of money. So first thing is filter your water. If you have $100, don't test it, filter it, because
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be something in it. Don't worry about that. There's going to be something in it. Even the good guys that cause that they use at water treatment facilities to kill viruses and bacteria form harmful compounds ultimately in your drinking water called trihalomethanes. Filter your water. Now, you can get, if you don't have a lot of money, you can even get a faucet mounted filter for about $30 that will filter about 90 to 95% of most of the lead and 75 to about 90% of all the PFAS. That's not perfect, but that's a big reduction. And it's going to make your drinking water much, much more safe. That's $30. Then I would take another $30 and buy myself a shower filter and filter my shower water, because you absorb the same PFAS and solvents and other chemicals when you breathe in all that vapor coming from the hot water running over your body as you're showering in the morning. So I would get
Right.
a shower filter. That's $60.
Right. Well, do you have like a certain brand or a kind that you recommend for the faucet filter?
Well, the ones that have been tested and have been shown to be effective include Brita. And for a pitcher filter, the zero water pitcher right now will remove PFAS. So what you can do, you've spent $60, right? You got your water faucet filter, you got your shower filter. The third thing I would buy is a water pitcher filter, like a Brita or I personally use the zero water filter. And that's what we took down to St. James, Louisiana, to help folks there too, because it does filter PFAS. So I would filter your water through your faucet into your pitcher and do a double filtration, and you'll get even more removal. This is
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest things you can do for your pregnancy, for your personal health, and for all of your kids' health. It's under $100, and the health dividends are worth priceless because you're going to protect your family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was one thing that when we bought our house, we did invest in a reverse osmosis system for drinking. And then I learned after that you need to add some minerals back into your water. So I got some stuff to just like trace minerals or, different things to add into our water when we drink it. But we don't have it on our like faucets. And that's actually been something I've been thinking of, because like my girls, when they're in the bath, they're always drinking the bath water and, doing different things. And I'm always like, stop drinking because they're like just little and having fun. But that's definitely something. I know that they have ones like for your bathtub. I've seen them before to put on, but that's a really great suggestion and something that I need to look into.
Oh yeah, and you can get them on Amazon, for $25. It's
Right.
such a, it's so much better. You have to, we have to have health insurance, right? But this is real health insurance. This is really preventing illness,
Mm-hmm.
cancer, lost pregnancies. Uh, um, it's really important for your family.
Yeah. Well, I mean, since you're saying like that PFAs are like bad for you and these different things. Like, what are they? Like, what actually is that in the water, and what's it doing to our bodies?
So PFAS are called forever chemicals. They were used to make, and still are used to make Teflon. So all those pots and pans in our home that still have Teflon, that's another thing. You want to replace those if you still have Teflon covered pots and pans. That
Right.
Teflon, excuse me, you know that they thought, scientists thought because Teflon was inert and resistant to flames and stuff that it wouldn't react in the body, but it does. So it's also used in firefighting foam, but it's also used in fabrics for stain resistance and water resistance. So all that Gore-Tex stuff you have from a few years ago, it's probably all got some kind of PFAS chemical until they switched over. And some, I don't, you know, Gore-Tex is a brand, and I don't want to, I'm using them as an example, not a specific, but all this, you know, your furniture, for example, if you bought a couch in 2012, 2014, and it was stain and water resistant, it's probably got those PFAS chemicals in it. Gradually, we're getting rid of them through regulations, and particularly California has been
Yeah.
strong. But again, here's a tip that's in my book. Furniture that you buy now has to have a label that says if it has fire retardants and chemicals added to it. So you should look at the label on the bottom of the furniture you're contemplating buying and see if it says it's flame retardant free. And then you should check out the manufacturer and just make sure that they're PFAS free. Most are now, because you don't really need to add PFAS. You want to be sure to buy avoid buying stain and water resistant products, whether it's furniture, your clothing, your
Right.
child's school uniform. You know, school uniforms are another thing
Mm-hmm.
where they're stain and water resistant, right? But that means they may have PFAS.
But it's
But
all
these,
uniforms. Like I heard like
yeah,
flight attendants, like any like job where you're provided a uniform, that they
yeah.
have that in there.
So all of this is you know, it seems like a lot, but I wrote a whole book that's really easy to read
Yeah.
because it is simple. And I spent, you know, I've done this for a long time, and I really want to make it simple for people. You won't be perfect, but the
Right.
more you know, the healthier you will be. You'll see it in your kids too. Uh, I I don't know how you feel about it, and you know how much organic they're eating and stuff, but I really feel that your kids feel a lot healthier when they're eating that healthier, pesticide-free food, and you know their snacks are really energy dense and healthy, you know,
Mm-hmm.
snacks, and they'll eat them if you put them in front of them. I find that if you put something in front of them in the refrigerator, like if there's an apple right in front of them, or if there's a big bowl of healthy organic almonds and organic raisins and goji berries and walnuts, they'll reach for those things if you just put them within arm's reach. So these are all the things you can do um, in all aspects of your life that really are simple. You just have to kind of wake up to them and know them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it makes sense that when you eat well, you feel well. I mean, that's even for adults, for anybody, like, you
Absolutely.
know, how you're fueling your body is definitely gonna reflect in some of how you feel. Um, I know I had somebody on the podcast a while ago, and she specializes in non-toxic children's stuff. So I always go to her website because like we don't realize the amount of like flame retardants and things like that in car seats and strollers and all these things that our kids are in a lot and being exposed to a lot. And so she always makes recommendations of the ones that actually don't have that. Um, you know, because she's really passionate about that. But there's even, I saw a pair of like kids' pajamas the other day that they had to label it on there. It was something about being flame retardant on these pajamas. And I'm like, why would they put that like in these little kids' clothing? Like, you know, that stuff in it. But even I was at Costco the other day, and we need new furniture in our house. Everything that we've had is really old and outdated, but also we have little kids, so we know that they're gonna like destroy everything anyways. But they had this big comfy cushion couch on there, and it's stain resistant. And I'm like, man, that couch looks awesome, but I know since it's stain resistant, it's full of chemicals.
Yeah, it's going to have one of the PFAS in it. They may say it won't have this PFAS or PFAS, but there's 6,000 of them.
Right, right. So it's like the stickware that says Teflon free non-stickware. It's like, okay, or something says BPA free, they've just replaced it with another chemical.
But we're smarter than that, and we know, and I share in Raising Healthy Kids, there are so many good furniture manufacturers now.
Yeah,
These things are all available, and there's lots of good names that I share in the book where you can get furniture that's sustainable,
yeah.
and you know what? It'll be healthier for the home. It'll be
Hmm.
healthier for the home.
What are some like safe brands that you can think of that there are to buy?
Well, I know that Ethan Allen
Hmm.
and Crate and Barrel have both eliminated PFAS and fire retardants from their products. Um, and there are dozens and dozens. You know, you can Google PFAS-free furniture, and so many brands will come up now. It's
Yeah.
really easy to do this.
Hmm.
Um, on the other hand, what I really want parents to know is don't beat yourself up either.
Right,
You know,
right.
you're not going to be perfect in this. The point is to get big reductions when you can. You know, just for example, one thing parents often overlook is kids eat a lot of bread,
Yeah.
right? And I tell parents, make sure your bread is organic. And they ask me why, and I say, well, every bread sample that we've ever tested at our nonprofit, and every bread sample that we've seen from the FDA that they've tested has at least one nerve toxin pesticide residue in it. It could be malathion, it could have been chlorpyrifos, diazinon, there's methimidofos. All of these are linked to ADHD in kids, and our kids eat so many grains and bakery products, and these all have the organophosphate chemicals.
Hmm.
So it's so simple to go organic here and really eliminate them. So, you know, we can't be perfect, but making a simple choice like buying organic bread can really make a big difference. It will make a big difference in your child's health. So don't beat yourself up. Do what you can do, learn, educate, and just keep moving forward one step at a time, one task at a time as a parent.
Yeah. I know a lot of people listening would love to be able to buy more organic for their family, but it just seems like it's not affordable. Or it's not something like maybe you can buy some organic this, but not everything. But is it true that like organic food is more expensive when you compare it to the conventionally grown food?
No, I don't think that's necessarily true anymore. And what I have found, I do a lot of shopping on Instacart, for example, and I'll compare prices organic versus non-organic. Many of the staples that we need in our home, like celery, lettuce, tomatoes, apples, oranges, are very competitively priced with conventionally grown. I'm really concerned about this because of equity and environmental justice. You know, as I said, I've um, worked with folks in Cancer Alley in Louisiana and talked about organics there too, and gone to supermarkets there to price things out there too. And even there, like there's one Winn-Dixie in this one area, but it does have organics, right? And you can, right now, for example, if you go on Instacart, folks, organic apricots and plums, when you buy in season, they are so cheap. So
Hmm.
right now we're buying for the kids lots of organic apricots, plums, watermelon, because they're all in season and they are competitively priced. What I also do in Raising Healthy Kids is share which foods, if they're not organic, are least toxic. And there are lots of examples of foods that are fairly safe that you can buy. So you can prioritize. For example, I would definitely make sure apples are organic. Um, I would, on the other hand, feel like bananas, I want them to be organic and they're pretty competitively priced, but I wouldn't worry about it as much. But I
Hmm.
would make the foods that my kids eat a lot of, make sure those are organic. Cauliflower, I buy organic, but if it's not organic, it's one of the less toxic. choices. So I go through less
Yeah.
toxins. But but what I make, the point I'm trying to make is you can bargain shop, you can shop in season, you can buy in bulk. Like you can buy a 3-pound pack of organic blueberries at Costco or Whole Foods, and it's not too expensive. You can afford it. And that makes a great dessert with some non-fat yogurt. You
Hmm.
know, if you can't buy organic milk, at least buy non-fat, because all the most harmful pesticides accumulate in the fat. So if you buy non-fat dairy, then you're not getting the DDT, the chlordane, the dieldrin, the chemicals that are persistent and accumulate in the fatty tissues of the animals and then in the milk they produce.
Wow, I've never heard that before. Um, Good to know. I have some non-organic cauliflower in my fridge right now. It's actually gonna
Yeah.
make for dinner tonight.
Yeah.
So
So don't beat yourself up over that. But the
yeah,
bread,
yeah,
but the bread is doable. Do you see what I'm
yeah,
saying? The bread is
yeah,
a doable thing.
yeah. Well,
The
for bread,
grains.
I usually get the organic Dave's Killer bread at Costco. But I've actually been on a sourdough kick lately and I've been making it myself, and Costco started selling this really great organic flour. So that's what we've been
There you go.
doing.
That's great.
Um,
That sounds
but
great.
and I just got some nectarines and they are so good.
And they're on when they're on sale, isn't it great? Because they really aren't. It's
Right,
they're
yeah.
very competitively
But I
priced.
did go for the organic ones because I know that they were on the EWG website this
Yeah.
year for being like in the top 12, like most toxic or most covered in
So
pesticides.
so anything that's soft skinned is going to have fungicides: strawberries, blueberries, nectarines,
Yeah.
apricots, plums. So what I do, because blueberries can be really expensive, is I usually buy the frozen for the kids.
Yeah, we do that.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what I was going to suggest too. I'm like, my kids love frozen fruit. They're big on frozen mango and blueberries. They do almost every day yogurt with blueberries. So if you're gonna not do non-fat dairy, is there a difference with yogurt? If you're doing or like dairy, if it's organic, does it have less of that stuff in there?
So if you get organic dairy, it's even better. So the
Yeah.
way the priority is avoid whole fat whenever possible. Non-fat, whether it's organic or non-organic, is better. But non-fat and organic would be the least contaminated, because one of the things about dairy is that the farmers still do use a lot of antibiotics to raise dairy cows, and those antibiotics can appear in the milk that you drink and interact with your children's genes or interact with their gut biota and change their gut balance. So I do buy organic milk. So, it's a little more expensive. It's like $1 more for a half gallon usually. It may be a little less if you go to Walmart and Costco.
Yeah.
But again, I do it because this is because I've read the studies, and my job as a parent is to make my kids healthy and protect them. And they don't know this stuff, and I feel really, honestly, I'd feel really guilty if I foisted things on them that I know and they don't know. Like, I know organic dairy is healthier. Our kids don't know that. Kids don't know about, like, my teenagers, they don't know what cosmetics are safe. They don't think about these
Yeah.
things. So I have to think about them for them. And I find, again, although it's very difficult to keep up with my daughter. Okay, that's not, I try to share with her, look, you want to get organic and phthalate free. But I do find if you put them in their bathroom or into their hands, they'll use them. They may not be thinking about it when they're 16, 17 years old. They've got, girlfriends and boyfriends and social things on their mind. They're not thinking about. So mom and dad really have to think about these things for their kids. And when you do that, though, and you put safe products in their hands, like the safe cosmetics, they've done studies now where you can measure the levels of phthalates and phenol compounds, and parabens go way down in their bodies. And so when our daughters and sons grow up, they'll have healthier eggs for healthier
Yeah.
kids themselves and healthier
Hmm.
sperm. And it's all
Yeah.
manageable.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I actually just interviewed somebody who she talks about maternal health and fetal outcomes. And she was saying that we don't know the repercussions on like infertility from like our grandparents' generation. It's like what your grandma is putting in her body when she's pregnant with your mom, who's carrying the egg that you're going to be. Because I was an egg in my grandmother's womb at one point, because all my mom's eggs were formed at 4 months in utero. That impacts, like, it's passed down generationally. So we have people in my generation who are dealing with infertility issues, even if, let's say, they made super healthy, great choices their lifetime, but it's things passed down from past generations that have affected it. And I mean, we even see that with the sperm count now. Like, the sperm count for men is plummeted. It's gone down so much. It's gone down like 80% in 60 years. It's wild. So we're seeing it happen. You can't like deny that these things aren't affecting our bodies.
It's a little even more weirder than you think, because our kids today are completely in a different modified gene pool than our grandparents. Our grandparents grew up before the chemical age. And
Yeah.
researchers now mark around 1945 as the Anthropocene age, the age of man or humans. And chemicals proliferated then. So my kids have never known an inheritance that wasn't chemically exposed, because I was totally, as I mentioned, I grew up eating DDT,
Right.
So what I do know is this, and what I believe very strongly is this, is that we can nurture our genes. No
Mm-hmm.
matter what has happened, we can bring the best out of them. Some effects are multi-generational, but that doesn't relieve us of kind of our responsibility to make the best out of what we've been left with. And this is affecting everybody,
Right.
because these are all neurobiological. I mentioned they affect hormones, sex hormones,
Mm-hmm.
not just our kids. It's you and I and everybody. If we look at why there's a little more societal dysfunction, or why there's more gender variation, or more ADHD, that's because we've injected wild cards into the environment. We've always interacted sexually and gender wise with the environment ever since humankind. But what's different now is that we're interacting with all these chemicals that act like little estrogens.
Right.
They're impacting all of us. So
Mm-hmm.
we also kind of have to be aware of how our kids are bioneurologically. They don't think like us. They don't identify gender wise like what happened, in this testosterone driven 60s, because that age is gone. Like you were mentioning testosterone, well, you were mentioning sperm counts declining,
Yeah. Yeah.
along with testosterone that's declining,
Right.
because we're kind of estrogenizing our environment.
Right. Right. Like the endocrine disruptors mimic estrogen in the body, and it does have like a huge change. Like, and you can't deny that. Like, the science is there, the research is there. And so I mean, it definitely is something that is impacting our
Well,
environment today.
what gets me is, though, all these anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ laws are not based on science. They're so horribly punishing, because this is what we've created. Our society is how we've created it. And people are what they are because of things that happen in utero, and all the variations that we see and how people identify have always been there. Nothing there, and they're all good and they're all great creations. The only thing that's changing because of our exposure are the percentages. But even when we increase percentages by 1 or 2%, maybe we get 1 or 2% more dysfunctional kids, because of chemical exposures and lost IQ. This disrupts society. Those are big waves, you
Yeah.
know? So we have to be really careful. We should know the science of gender and sexuality and stop going against what's biologically the fact, because it's denying reality, actual reality, biological reality.
Well, I think when it comes to any issue that, I guess I'm trying to think of how to word this, any issue that's like keeping the country divided, where people are yelling at one side and on the other side, when it comes to any of those things, like there's nothing that's black and white. There's like such a gray and a nuanced and like so many other factors that are involved. But so there's laws that are black and white, but we're not like a black and white society. There's individual situations and circumstances and nuance, and we don't create room for all of that, so it's hard when the way that the world's just going today in general.
But one thing I'm trying to do in the our movement, which I call the anti-toxics movement, is one of the youngest movements in America. It's 50 years old at most, 60 years old when Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring. We didn't even have the words for antitoxic, parts per billion, endocrine disruptor. It's a whole new vocabulary. But I'm trying to get beyond politics, because whether you're blue or red, this or that, you Republican or Democrat, it's kids. And we all know the chemicals affect them.
Right.
Everybody knows that. You don't have to, and you don't have to be one political party or another to know you got to protect your kids. So what I'm trying to be is really, really just getting right down to unite people to be anti-toxics and to find something that unites people. Like, we're going to be doing a little newspaper in the Cancer Alley parishes of Louisiana. We're going to talk about drinking water. Why
Mm-hmm.
drinking water? Because everyone drinks that water. It affects all of our kids.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Is it true? I remember hearing somewhere that we basically consume a credit card worth of plastic a day through either our waters, our food, or whatever we're taking. And that it's like if you're drinking plastic bottled water or things like that, that you're basically almost consuming like a credit card's worth of plastic a day.
Well, I don't know if it's a credit, I don't know how to translate it like that. What I do know is that we're consuming enough so that the kids with the highest amounts of plastic compounds like phthalates are the ones who are going to have neurological problems like cognitive difficulties, learning difficulties, ADHD, altered gender behavior. So whether it's a credit card or leaf, it's enough. It's hurting our
Mm-hmm.
kids.
Right. Well, the thing is, you don't hear about, I mean, I feel like I've done a lot of research and I've heard like a lot about this type of stuff, but you don't see it in the big news. It's not like, I mean, maybe I don't watch the news, so maybe I don't really know, but like, it's not like CNN is covering behavior modifications in children and toxic chemicals and consumption.
No, they're not taking it seriously.
Right, right.
Remember, just a week ago, CNN was basically killing off RFK and doing RFK Jr. and doing a
Yeah.
lot of hit pieces on them. And what did they use? The endocrine disruption.
Mm-hmm.
What they were doing is queering the news. Both Kennedy and CNN are queering the news. Instead of having a discussion like we're having, which is empowering parents and talking about the law and legislation, they're going right for the queering part. EDCs make our kids trans, right?
Mm.
Well, they cause cancer, they cause IQ loss. That's the least of our issues. But they're using it because it's clickbait.
Right, right.
And we got to have discussions like this, like what we're having, where we're just talking about it in real terms,
Mm-hmm.
not sensationalizing it, but talking about it, because these are solvable problems. Look, most of America agrees we should have zero tolerance for chemical toxins.
Right. I mean, most of America, when you talk to a lot of people about a lot of things, they seem in agreement with a lot of things. But that's not that's not the clickbait. That's not what people want to hear.
Yeah, so they go for, EDCs in our drinking water are causing kids to be trans. It's not that simple. You can't
Right.
talk about it like that, because it's a phenomenon called queering the news,
Hmm.
where you're using something that's completely normal and now making it sound bad, right?
Right. Right.
You can't do that. Again, look at what these are doing to our kids' IQ, our societal dysfunction. These are the issues that we need to, zero tolerance, disclosures. Consumers have a right to know about the chemicals.
Right.
Listen, I'll tell you an example. We sued Justin's Nut Butters.
Oh yeah. That's
Because
like you think that
Right,
that's a
right.
clean brand.
Because they weren't telling consumers in California that they had really high levels, in our opinion, here at the Healthy Living Foundation, of an industrial chemical called acrylamide that's linked with endometrial and uterine cancer in our daughters. Okay. We
Wow.
had to sue them in court. And we have a court case going right now. It's in California court, dealing with this issue. They continue to sell a product that, in our opinion, is unsafe. Okay. This is what we got to be talking about: consumer disclosure.
Right.
You, as a mom, have a right to know that. My kids bought that product. That's how I came to
Right.
know about it. There are safer products out there that don't have so much acrylamide. Why
Yeah.
not buy those? For example, the Whole Foods 365 nut butter tested so much safer.
Hmm.
So why not buy that? If companies were forthcoming and disclosing what they know, and certainly Justin's knows what I'm talking about because we've
Right.
informed them in court proceedings, they would be telling consumers. We have to require that with labeling laws, either on the state or federal level. So we need activists in every state, you know, working on laws. That's where the discussion needs to be. And it's empowering people. And people are smart enough to get it. And I kind of wish CNN and, you know, and RFK would talk about these issues rather
Right.
than hearing the news.
Right. Right. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, how do we, I guess, get, like you said, we need activists in every state. So as parents, like, how can we start to be activists? Like, how can we do better? I mean, we can make those changes, but how do we try to like force that change from an upper level, so that we don't have to continually research every single product that we're going to buy?
So to be an activist, that's what Raising Healthy Kids is all about. When you buy that organic bread, that organic apple, those organic strawberries, you're making a huge difference. Let me just give you a really quick story from the book, that'll show you what I mean. For years, I've been buying organic strawberries, right? You know where they're all grown. They're all grown in the Salinas Valley and California, along the coastal region in Florida, but particularly in the Salinas Valley of California, where all these schools are situated in the middle of strawberry fields. And for years, these schools were bombarded with the same fungicides and pesticides being sprayed on all the strawberry plants. Kids were getting sick. Diazinon was being sprayed. I kept buying, and consumers like you and me, we kept buying all these organic strawberries. Everybody told us, you're so stupid. Why are you spending more on organics, right? And there's no difference, and you're not making a difference. During the pandemic, I drove up to Salinas to these same schools that were being bombarded 10 years ago. They're all surrounded by organic strawberry fields now.
Oh, cool.
Isn't that? And I looked and I was kind of crying. I was going, thank you, Lord, for this miracle, because I kept the faith as a consumer that my buying all these organic strawberries all these years was making a difference. And 300 miles north of me in the Salinas Valley, it did make a difference. All these kids in these schools in the middle of farm fields, instead of being bombarded by chemical pesticides, they were in the middle of organic strawberry fields. The workers were safer. The kids were safer. It's so much healthier. And you know who did that? You and me,
Yeah.
with our purchases. It's
Mm-hmm.
real.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're being an activist just when you shop, when you buy safer cosmetics, you're sending a message that shapes the markets. And that does impact Washington. We just got better legislation passed for the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, giving the FDA a little more oversight now over cosmetics. It's not perfect, but Washington and a blue Congress heard the consumer's voice and they've acted. So you have to do it personally. That speaks to Congress. But I also talked, the last chapter of Raising Healthy Kids is how to teach your kids to be an activist. But mom and dad, you're really learning too. So I
Right.
go into, here are some letters you can send to Congress. Here are the ways you need to look at laws. But you're being an activist every time you shop. And every time you shop and do the right thing, you want to do a little more, because it's kind of invigorating to know you're fighting back against the machine. It's kind of
Right.
invigorating.
Yeah, for
So
sure. I'm
we
a
need to
rebel
know.
at heart, so I
Yeah.
love that stuff.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is, like, I know that there's a couple of larger like Instagram accounts. One of them I followed for a little bit, but I had to unfollow them because they basically say like pesticides don't matter, like non-GMO doesn't matter, buying organic really doesn't make a difference. And there are these really large accounts that put this information out there, and then they have like their research or studies that back it up. And I'm like, there's just like in no world can you say that it's okay to consume all of these pesticides, you know?
So you know, there are still 10% of the American population believes Elvis is alive, right?
Yeah.
Okay. 30% are still fighting the Civil War from 1865.
Hmm.
That's who you're dealing with. You're dealing with people who are trolling. I've really looked at this very carefully, what the studies say. And it's so clear when you put all the evidence from animal studies, biological studies, all the human epidemiological studies, that what I'm talking about, reducing exposure, buying organic, it creates a healthier society and a healthier America, and it's so good for your family. The studies really do come out on the side of making these choices. And anybody who speaks to the contrary is a troll.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I mean, I don't know if they're actual scientists, but they're doctors and scientists who are saying this. And
Well, they're
so
paid
it's,
lots of money to say these things.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's called industrial science, which is a bit oxymoronic. But you know, what I go by is public health policy,
Right.
preventing the body count.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I unfollowed
And I
one. I
bust
followed them
these
briefly.
people, you know.
Yeah. Hmm.
We busted Justin's. We called them on it. We called General Mills on their Chex products,
Yeah.
which are also loaded with acrylamide.
Yeah.
So, you
Hmm.
know, I know what's going on out there. You know, I'm in the trenches. You got to go
Right.
organic. You got to reduce exposure because there are some companies that are really taking advantage of what you don't know as a consumer.
Oh, yeah, totally. Definitely. Well, before we wrap up, I'd love for you to tell us where people can find your book and if there's anything else that you want to leave us with.
So, Raising Healthy Kids, How to Protect Your Children from the Hidden Chemical Toxins in Our Everyday Lives will be out in January from Skyhorse Publishing, but you can go to Amazon and just or Google Raising Healthy Kids, David Steinman on Amazon or Google or whatever search engine. And the book will come up for pre-sales and you can get your copy now and you'll have it in January. It's got so many great stories of parents, so much, it'll make this really easy for you and you'll become an activist. Your kids will be happier, healthier.
Yeah.
So it's all
Yeah.
good. It's all a really positive, empowering adventure. And it's easy to read. I wrote it. So if you're busy, you're not going to put it down because I made it really entertaining with the good stories, but I don't waste words.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Well, cool. I will leave all of that in the show notes. And I just want to thank you for your time here today. Since the podcast is called Morning Hava, I like to ask guests how they take their morning Java. So how do you drink your morning coffee?
Well, on the advice of a good friend, I do have it just black now.
Yeah.
I used to put cream into it.
Yeah.
And she said, no, 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 just black. Because you know, all those calories add up, David. They really add up. And they do. So
Yeah.
I'm black coffee.
Do you drink organic black coffee?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes. I get it from Amazon. It's like $6 for 12 ounces or something.
Yeah.
And I feel good about that. Um, I feel good. Coffee is not the most pesticide riddled food you can eat, but I also feel that there are a lot of pesticides used in growing it unless you
Right.
buy organic. And so I
Right.
care about the workers who are
Hmm.
harvesting.
Right. Right. Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for your time and expertise here today. And I'm excited for the listeners to hear this and to learn more and to check out your book when it comes out.
Thanks, Elizabeth. This was a wonderful, wonderful time, and I'm so happy. Thank you so much.